Discover 8 incredible vegetables that transformed my life. Say goodbye to weak legs and tingling. Sarah felt the familiar ache in her legs, a relentless reminder that exhaustion was not just her companion, but her shadow. As a 35-year-old single mother, life was a constant juggling act: 2 jobs, 2 kids, and endless responsibilities wrapped in a tight-knit Midwestern town where everyone watched and whispered. Every morning began at dawn, making lunches, dressing her children, and racing to her first job. Each evening ended with her collapsing into bed, floorboards creaking under the weight of her unmet dreams. What little hope she had flickered like a candle, dimmed by the relentless cycle of survival. One sweltering summer day, as she unloaded a cart of groceries barely enough for her family, Sarah caught snippets of a conversation behind her. "Mr. Jenkins is starting a community garden," one woman said, her voice laced with excitement. The thought of fresh vegetables danced in Sarah's mind. Her heart raced, igniting a flicker of possibility against the murky backdrop of her daily struggles. Could growing her own food offer more than mere survival? She hesitated, the fear of judgment crawling under her skin. What if she failed? Questions flooded her mind while she weighed the benefits against the risk of exposing herself to more disappointment. The looming tension of her decision tightened around her like an anxious embrace. She envisioned the laughter of her children, faces smeared with dirt and joy, as they tended to their own garden. But even as her heart ached for change, her mind replayed the doubts, the whispers she could already hear swirling around town. A single mother in a community garden? What would she know? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. But despite the doubts gnawing at her spirit, Sarah made the decision to join the initiative. Armed with a shovel and Mr. Jenkins' patient guidance, she dug into the soil, each scoop symbolizing hope. The earth felt both foreign and comforting. Nutritious soil turned under her hands, bursting with life. As she nurtured tomatoes, kale, and carrots, she began to discover a resilience she never knew she possessed. Yet as the plants pushed through the dirt, so did the skepticism of her neighbors. Weeks passed, and just as she felt the first stirrings of strength within herself, disaster struck. Her aging car, which struggled as much as she did, sputtered and died, leaving her stranded between 2 jobs and 2 young children. Money became a whisper, just out of reach, as anxiety crept in, draining her newfound energy. The pressure mounted, tightening its grip around her chest. What little peace she found in the garden began to unravel, tangled in a web of doubt and shame. Desperation clawed at her heart as she faced the judgment of her neighbors. Why would she even try? A single mother can't do this. She felt the weight of their whispers pushing down on her, amplifying those doubts until they thundered in her mind. Once again, she was braiding her own shame with societal expectations. Would she ever escape? Would her children have to live in secrets and shadows? In that moment of maximum despair, she realized she faced not just her physical pain, but the biases that sought to define her. "I will not let you define me," echoed inside her, a hard-fought declaration against the creeping tides of doubt. With tools in hand, she stood poised for battle, but uncertainties loomed like storm clouds. Could she cultivate a future in the garden, or would the weeds of society choke her dreams before they had a chance to grow? The tension held tightly in her chest, unyielding and raw. With eyes set on the horizon, moving forward felt like a tightrope walk. Will the next step ground her in strength, or send her tumbling into despair? Each dawn greeted Sarah with the same stubborn resolve, a spark fanned by the flickering uncertainty of yesterday's despair. Retreating to the garden had become both a refuge and a battleground, where she wrestled with the weeds of her self-doubt while planting seeds of determination. Today was different, though she had decided that the paralysis created by others' judgments would no longer dictate her actions. She knelt among the thriving seedlings. Each vibrant green leaf heralded not just the fruits of her labor, but a testament to her potential. The garden transformed from mere survival into a crucible of empowerment. With each passing day, she felt the ache in her legs lessen, her physical strength paralleling her emotional growth. Each tomato ripening on the vine became a symbol of resilience, but the burdens of financial stress loomed large in her mind. The sobering reality that the car issue was not merely a mechanical failure, it was a fracture in her carefully maintained facade of control. That afternoon, she found herself seated at the scratched wooden table, flipping through bills in a desperate search for solutions. Her mind raced, conjuring images of her children's hopeful faces, dreaming of bright futures unencumbered by worry. What if I could sell some of the produce? The idea sparked, flickering gently but with undeniable warmth. It could be a first step, no longer just growing for herself, but venturing into entrepreneurship. She methodically piled up cucumbers, zucchini, and fragrant herbs. Her heart quickened. The thought of farmers' markets, bustling with life and potential, ignited her spirit. Would her neighbors see her produce and appreciate the effort, the spirit of improvement? Or would they remain resolute in their skepticism about a single mother peddling vegetables? The clash of excitement and fear played out like a symphony in her chest, urging her to act. She enlisted her children's help in packaging the fruits of their labor, transforming their playful giggles into a productive rhythm that echoed through their small home. "Mom, what if nobody buys them?" her daughter asked, a hint of worry shadowing her innocence. The question struck Sarah's heart. It was not only the produce they were offering. It was a peek into a life more colorful than the gray stretched before them. "Even if nobody buys them, we're doing this together. It's about sharing what we have and showing everyone we can grow," she replied with a smile that masked her own uncertainties. Market day arrived, bright and sunny, illuminating the path of promise ahead. Sarah felt the weight of judgment hovering around her. Was she a spectacle, an oddity? The fear coiled tightly within her, ready to unravel at any moment. Yet, when she set up her stand, the vibrant colors of her vegetables seemed to draw people in, igniting curiosity. With each compliment she received, confidence blossomed, and she began to feel empowering connections between her efforts and the reactions of her community. The voices that once spoke of her inadequacies softened in the face of her resolve, and she started redefining not only her approach to life, but her perception of herself. This small venture held the promise of growth, not just of vegetables, but of her very spirit. But just as the atmosphere began to shift toward acceptance, the skepticism of one familiar figure sent a shiver through her. The neighboring farmer, once a friend turned critic, approached her booth, arms crossed, and an unimpressed frown blooming on his weathered face. "Think this is going to get you anywhere?" His words hung heavy with accusation, laced with disdain. Caught off guard, Sarah battled the urge to retreat, but a deeper determination surged within her. The moment had come to face the doubt, and not just his, but the shadowy echoes of all those who dared to question her path. Would she stand her ground, or allow fear to shroud her newfound hope? His sneer echoed in her mind long after he walked away, but Sarah felt a spark ignite in the tumult of her emotions. His words were heavy, laden with condescension, yet they propelled her into a decision. She would not let his doubt define her. What had begun as a venture to create a little extra income had morphed into something bigger, in exploration of her own tenacity. As the sun began to dip below the horizon that evening, casting long shadows across her garden, Sarah sat on the porch, contemplating the day. The laughter of her children playing in the yard blended with the chirping of evening crickets, a soothing backdrop to her ruminations. Selling a few vegetables had felt like a step into the unknown, but now it was becoming a part of her identity, her first foray into reclaiming agency over her life. She decided to dive deeper into this entrepreneurial journey. Inspired, Sarah stretched her thoughts beyond the farmer's market. What if she learned more about what customers wanted? What if she expanded her offerings, experimented with new recipes, or shared her knowledge through workshops? She had spent years learning about gardening out of necessity, but now she could harness that experience to teach, to connect, and to empower both herself and others. That night, unable to sleep, Sarah scribbled ideas in her notebook in the dim light of the kitchen. She wrote about creating a newsletter to share gardening tips, recipes, and seasonal updates, turning her small victory into a platform. The potential loomed large in her mind, illuminating the vast possibilities before her. Each thought stemmed from her desire to do more than just survive. She craved to thrive. With this burst of inspiration, she awoke the next morning with a newfound vigor. As she prepared breakfast, she spoke animatedly to her children about her plans, their eyes wide with excitement as they absorbed the energy she radiated. She invited them to help her create a small farm-to-table event in their backyard, where they could serve meals using their produce. It was a chance to indulge their creativity and strengthen the bond they shared while bringing a piece of the community into their home. The first week passed swiftly, filled with learning and crafting. Sarah dug into books, studied market trends, and reached out to local community centers to gauge interest. The harsh voice of the neighboring farmer echoed less frequently in her thoughts, muffled by the thrill of creation. With each passing day, she embraced new skills that softened her lingering insecurities. As preparations for the event escalated, news spread through their small town. Neighbors she once feared would scoff at her efforts began to express curiosity, some offering to lend a hand. She felt a warmth swelling within as connections formed from shared interests, sparking a sense of belonging that had eluded her for so long. The tension of uncertainty still lurked, yet the adrenaline fueled her resolve rather than paralyzing her. But one fateful evening, as she was sorting through her garden harvest, she received a call that shattered her momentary serenity. It was an old friend from high school, a familiar voice now carrying heavy reminders of her past, a past filled with its own weight of judgments and insecurities. "Hey, did you hear about the farmers' competition coming up?" The question hung in the air like a challenge, stirring the remnants of her doubt. A choice loomed before her: retreat into the protective shell of her comfort zone or muster the courage to step into a wider arena, possibly exposing herself to the very criticism she had worked so hard to overcome. Would she dare to compete, risking another confrontation with skepticism? She took a deep breath as possibilities danced in her mind, a flicker of excitement battling the shadows of hesitation. Would this be the breakthrough she needed, or merely another moment to question her worth? The next morning, Sarah's resolve solidified like the morning dew on her garden's leaves. She stood before her mirrors, studying the reflection that had once felt foreign and frail. No longer was she just a homemaker chasing small dreams. She was an entrepreneur standing at the threshold of self-discovery. The weight of doubt lingered, but among it brewed the exhilarating promise of possibility. Determined to transform her anxiety into action, she donned her favorite apron, a colorful tribute to the harvest that had become her lifeline. She pulled up her contacts and began calling local suppliers for seeds she had never dared to try before. Exotic heirloom tomatoes, spicy peppers, fragrant herbs. She envisioned a vibrant palette to expand her produce offerings and deepen her knowledge. This wasn't just about selling. It was about mastering the art of gardening, transcending her insecurities. With every phone call, she felt the rush of empowerment. For each kind supplier who encouraged her, she replayed the derisive sneer of the neighboring farmer, now only a distant echo. In its place, each supportive voice reinforced her growing belief in her capabilities. Perhaps he wasn't the authority on success she had allowed him to be. Perhaps her voice paired well with that of her suppliers, each a crucial step towards flourishing in her chosen path. The call from her friend lingered in her mind. As she nurtured her seedlings, she resolved to attend the farmers' competition. The thought both thrilled and terrified her. Would the old judgments rise again? Or was this a chance to challenge them head-on? To cultivate not just her crops, but her sense of self-worth and identity. Late into the night, Sarah prepared her entry. She studied recipes, experimenting with unusual pairings. The tactile process of kneading dough and mixing flavors ignited creativity she had long suppressed. Cooking had always been instinctual for her, but now, with each dish, she witnessed the growth of her skills. This wasn't merely about showcasing her vegetables. It was a declaration of who she was becoming, a restaurateur in the making. Days wore on, filled with frenzied preparation and late-night brainstorming sessions with her children. They assumed roles as her enthusiastic sous chefs, adding colorful touches to each dish. The kitchen began to smell of not only spices but of dreams realized, of shared laughter, and of the joy of creation. As her children experimented too, their laughter mingled with the sounds of clanging pots. They were no longer just participating in an event. They were part of a journey that promised to uplift their family. The prospect of the competition loomed larger, and its weight pressed heavily on her shoulders. In moments of stillness, doubts returned like unwelcome guests, questioning her vision. But Sarah shrugged off their persistence, grounding herself in the memories of community support swelling around her. The night before the competition, she laid in bed, heart racing with anticipation. Could she truly take this step into the unknown? The reflection of doubt flickered in her mind, but was soon quelled by the image of her children, their eyes gleaming with pride as they talked about her dishes. The next morning, as she prepared to head to the competition, she found herself at a crossroads. Strapped into excitement, yet shadowed by fear, Sarah took one last look at her garden rich with yield. Each seed, each harvest, represented not just growth but resilience, a lesson etched into her heart. "I am not just a participant," she whispered to herself. "I am a contender." As she pulled out of her driveway, determination crystallized into a singular thought. This was a chance to reclaim her narrative, a chance to prove not just to others but to herself. Though the thrill of what lay ahead was palpable, she had yet to confront the murmurs of skepticism that still gnawed at her resolve. The competition awaited, and so did the opportunity to confront her opponent both external and within. As she drove toward that uncertain future, adrenaline thrummed through her veins. Would she emerge with a newfound confidence, or would doubt cloud her pursuit? The ultimate test had begun, and she would either rise to the occasion or fade back out of the way. Would fear hold her captive, or would she break free? The competition venue loomed into view as Sarah parked her car, its grandeur eliciting a rush of nerves. The vibrant banners fluttered in the breeze, promising a showcase of the finest produce and culinary prowess. She inhaled deeply, wiping sweaty palms on her apron, reminding herself of the purpose behind this endeavor. This wasn't merely a competition. It was an expression of her journey, a testament to the transformation she had undergone. As she stepped out, the air buzzed with excitement and chatter. Competitors rushed about, some flaunting their entries while others whispered strategies, an intimidating orchestra of enthusiasm layered over her own uncertainty. Sarah clutched her carefully packed basket, filled with her carefully curated dishes. Heirloom tomato bruschetta garnished with fresh herbs, roasted spicy pepper stuffed with her garden's finest cheese blend, and a colorful salad that mirrored her own vibrant journey. Each dish was a piece of her heart, reflecting months of toil and growth, both in her garden and within herself. Pushing through the uncertainty, she placed her basket among the others, trying to hide her trembling hands. Could she really compete against seasoned veterans? The doubt slinked in, creeping closer with every nervous glance around her. But then, she remembered the laughter shared in her kitchen, the way her children's faces lit up with every new recipe tried, and how this was about far more than just victory. She caught sight of the neighboring farmer, the smirk of his disdain still fresh in her memory. Instead of allowing that past humiliation to take root, she stood taller, letting her resilience shine through like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. This was not about defeating him. It was about celebrating her growth. Moments passed, leading to the opening announcements. Sarah stood shoulder to shoulder with other contestants, their faces revealing a blend of confidence and trepidation. When her name was called, she stepped forward, her heart racing. With each tiny step, it felt like she was not only moving forward in the competition, but also toward reclaiming her place in the world, one that had often felt elusive. Presenting her dishes felt like bearing her soul. Every flavor, aroma, and color spoke of her journey. As she explained her choices and the farm-fresh importance of her ingredients, she channeled her nervousness into passion, engaging the judges with the stories woven into her culinary fabric. She wasn't merely answering questions. She was sharing a piece of herself, and in that moment, the fear began to dissipate, replaced by clarity and purpose. Yet, just as the first compliments rolled in, whispers of skepticism returned, taunting her with the possibility of failure. The judges' faces were inscrutable, their expressions shifting as they deliberated. Was the outcome simply a game of chance, or did she possess the innate skills to sway their decision? The tension churned within her, an urgent reminder that personal victory would mean transcending the very doubt she had sought to overcome. Finally, the time arrived for the judges' feedback. Each word felt like a lifeline as they praised her ingenuity and the vibrancy of her dishes. Hope surged within her. Maybe she was more than she had ever believed. Yet as the names of the winners were called, a new wave of introspection crashed over her. She hadn't won any title, but wasn't victory still rooted in this experience of growth? While still processing the outcome, Sarah wandered from the crowd. Leaning against a wooden fence, her heart pounded not from defeat, but from the exhilaration of having taken the leap. In that moment, she realized that championships were not the only measure of success. The authentic connections forged in her kitchen, the journey of discovery, and the strength she had built were victories in their own right. Just then, a gentle touch on her shoulder broke her reverie. It was a woman she recognized from the event, her eyes warm with understanding. "You did well. It's about the passion you put in," she said, her voice soothing like a balm to Sarah's lingering uncertainty. As they conversed, Sarah found herself sharing insights about her garden, igniting new ideas about collaboration and growth. Perhaps the true competition was yet to come, one that wouldn't involve judges or prizes, but rather her continuous journey of evolving as both a gardener and an entrepreneur. Could she cultivate a business that embraced her passion? With a renewed sense of determination, Sarah gazed across the expanse of the fairgrounds, envisioning a future where her culinary voice echoed louder than ever before. As she stepped away, the heart of adventure pulsed around her. What new challenges awaited, and how would they shape the woman she was destined to become? The next phase of her journey beckoned with a promise of even greater self-discovery. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a warm glow over the sprawling landscape as Sarah wandered deeper into her thoughts. The exhilaration from her earlier presentation lingered, but it mingled with new ideas swirling in her mind. What now? The seeds of entrepreneurship had been sown during her conversation with the woman from the competition, and enough excitement bubbled within her to spur action. Determined to channel this newfound energy into a tangible plan, she decided to head home and evaluate the fruits of her garden. Each plant represented an opportunity, a connection to the earth that had nurtured her both literally and metaphorically. As she walked through her rows, she felt a rush of affection for her vegetables, the vibrant greens contrasting with the earthy browns. Gazing at her heirloom tomatoes, she envisioned them sliced alongside her freshly baked bread, their sweetness complemented by her own handmade oils and vinegars. What if she could create a tasting experience that told a story? Each dish could unfold her journey, her struggles, her triumphs, a narrative woven through the aromas wafting from her kitchen. Yet, with excitement came the tremors of doubt. Would anyone be interested in her homemade offerings? Small local markets danced in her thoughts, yet the memory of the farmer's dismissive smirk returned, whispering doubts in her ear. Confronting her fears was essential, she knew. The only way to transform uncertainty into strength was to act. That night, as the stars blinked into existence, Sarah pulled out a notebook and began brainstorming. Fresh from my garden, she wrote at the top of the page, followed by colorful sketches and notes about possible dishes she could craft. She focused on showcasing seasonal vegetables, highlighting their flavors, and developing a small but enticing menu. Time slipped away as her passion took hold, the lines on the page filling with potential and hope. She noted a few essential elements for her business: sustainability, community engagement, and authenticity, each a pillar supporting her vision. Could she host small gatherings, do tastings, or even workshops to teach others about the food that had transformed her own life? She paused, chewing on the end of her pencil, wrestling with a thought that pierced through her enthusiasm. Collaboration could be the key to overcoming her insecurities and expanding her reach. What if she sought feedback from local chefs or fellow gardeners? It was one thing to create in solitude, but sharing her vision could ignite a symbiosis of ideas, enhancing both her business and the community around her. As the clock ticked past midnight, she felt a sense of clarity, a manifesto forming on the fragile pages of her notebook. This was her moment to step away from the shadows and bask in her passion. Yet there was a nagging voice that cautioned her against complacency. Would her aspirations remain nothing more than dreams if she didn't act decisively? The next morning, with her notebook tucked under her arm, Sarah ventured to the community center where local entrepreneurs often gathered. The decision to share her ideas, the very essence of her vulnerability, thrummed like a heartbeat. What if they rejected her vision? But the potential to cultivate something greater outweighed her fear. As she approached, the buzz of conversation enveloped her. Laughter and ideas intermingled in a symphony of creativity. Taking a deep breath, she stepped forward into a space filled with possibility. This would be her new chapter, where she would not only confront her insecurities, but also invite others to partake in her journey. "Can I get everyone's attention?" she called out, her voice steady but layered with excitement. As heads turned toward her, the moment crystallized in time and opportunity awaited her. But would she seize it? Standing there, Sarah realized she stood at the precipice of transformation. But what awaited her on the other side? With anticipation tinged by trepidation, she was ready to discover the answers that lay ahead. The room quieted, and the weight of Sarah's unspoken thoughts hovered in the air. She could feel her heart race, each beat echoing louder than the last. Uncertainty battled with an urgent desire to share her passion. This moment, she understood, was pivotal. What I want to talk about today is how food, particularly homegrown food, can be much more than sustenance. It can be a journey, she began, her voice unwavering. She crafted her words as carefully as she tended to her garden, each sentence rooted in her personal exploration of growth and resilience. As she spoke, she felt the warmth of authenticity enveloping her. Vulnerability shifted into strength. Sarah shared snippets of her journey, from the initial struggles of learning to garden to the burst of joy when she first bit into a perfectly ripe tomato. Her anecdotes, laced with humor and raw honesty, slowly drew in the audience. One by one, she noticed people leaning forward, engaged, willing to listen. With every story shared, her confidence bloomed. "Imagine hosting a gathering," she paused, allowing her words to paint a picture, "where each dish tells a story, where every bite matters. This could be a way to celebrate our shared experiences, to connect through food." She caught glimpses of nodding heads and intrigued faces, and in that moment, she realized it was not just her vision, but it was becoming theirs too. As she wrapped up, she invited questions. The floor erupted into discussion, ideas flying around the room like seeds scattered in the wind. Encouraged by the enthusiasm of her new peers, Sarah began to realize that her vision was not only plausible, it was contagious. Yet, amid the excitement, an unexpected wave of anxiety crept in. What if I fail? The question gripped her, a tight knot in her stomach. In the midst of encouragement, her insecurity lingered, whispering reminders of her past doubts. These were real people with backgrounds, experiences, and expectations. They saw potential in her where she sometimes struggled to see it herself. As the session ended, Sarah floated on a cloud of adrenaline, exhilarated yet aware of the work ahead. A few attendees approached her, each offering their own expertise. One was a chef interested in collaborating, another had marketing skills to share. For the first time, she sensed a community forming around her aspiration, and the prospect of collaboration sparked something deep within. This was not just about her vision. It was a collective journey towards something beautiful. Yet, as she walked home, excitement began to morph into a deeper complexity. Was this integration enough? Could she truly navigate a path defined by her conditions, her unique style, intertwined with others' contributions? The fear of losing herself amidst collaboration gnawed at her. Would she have to compromise her authenticity to build a successful venture? That night, exhausted yet restless, Sarah plucked her notebook from her desk. She needed a plan, something concrete to ground her swirling thoughts. She flipped to the pages filled with sketches and ideas, focusing on how to weave others' contributions into her narrative without losing her voice. Each note and drawing ignited a connection she hadn't considered before. Working with others should feel like a dance, not a sacrifice. The sun would rise again, and with it, Sarah knew she had vital steps to take. She would explore not only partnerships, but also establish boundaries that honored her passion while allowing room for collaboration. Yet, as the last light faded from the sky, she questioned what boundaries would truly serve her vision. The journey was only beginning, but the stakes felt incredibly real. Tomorrow would hold new challenges, and she was eager to confront them. But what would balance look like between collaboration and autonomy? Would she discover the delicate equilibrium necessary to thrive? The answers were waiting, just out of reach, beckoning her to pursue them. The morning sun bathed Sarah's kitchen in warm light, illuminating her organized chaos of seeds, pots, and gardening tools. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee mingled with the earthy scent of compost, a reminder of her commitment to nurturing not just plants but her own growth. Today wasn't just another day. It was the beginning of a new chapter, a deliberate step toward integrating her vision with the ideas sparked by her recent meeting. She sat down with her notebook, the blank pages a canvas filled with potential. Sarah's heart raced, every beat echoing a mix of excitement and trepidation as she examined her notes from the session. Each idea was like a branch on a tree, and she needed to determine which would bear fruit. As her pen glided across the page, she drafted a plan that honored her authenticity while inviting others to add their unique strengths to the mix. But would just having a plan alleviate her doubts? The thought nagged at her. To truly collaborate, she needed to be clear about what she hoped to achieve. Sarah remembered how each seed she planted had specific needs: sun or shade, water or dry. She wanted her vision structured similarly, a framework within which she could flourish, but she struggled to articulate these boundaries. The fear of compromise loomed large. What if, in pursuing partnerships, she lost her distinct flavor, her touch? That question echoed through her mind as she decided to take a day solely for herself. Rather than diving into collaboration right away, she would reconnect with her roots literally and metaphorically. She pulled on her gardening gloves and headed outside, feeling the earth cool beneath her fingers as she dug into the soil. Each scoop was a reminder of her labor, her patience, her failures. Sarah found a sense of solace in the rhythmic motions, her mind releasing frayed edges of worry. She focused on her garden's needs, crafting a metaphorical map of her professional aspirations alongside the rows of vegetables thriving in her backyard. Hours passed as she pruned, planted, and tended, and with each passing minute, clarity began to emerge. She visualized a growing garden flourishing in tandem with collaborators, each vegetable representing a type of contribution: creativity, marketing strategies, culinary skills. It became apparent that she didn't have to let go of her essence. Instead, she could cultivate an ecosystem whereby everyone's talents complemented one another, just as the diverse plants in her garden flourished side by side. Yet a conundrum presented itself: how to keep the journey authentic when inviting others in. As she reached for a robust basil plant, a sudden anxiety gripped her. What if someone suggested altering her recipes to fit popular trends? Would she stand firm in her approach, or bend to industry pressures? That night, the weight of that question lingered like a shadow in her mind. Sarah returned to her notebook, this time with a new focus. She listed her core values, the principles that would never be negotiable regardless of the partnerships she forged. Her authenticity would not be a casualty of collaboration, it would be its backbone. But writing those values down didn't eliminate her fears, it fueled them. The scarier the prospect of exposing her true motivations felt, the more she recognized that vulnerability was an integral part of this journey. What if her transparency invited critics into her world? Just as her thoughts spiraled toward the potential harshness of judgment, she halted. The fear of being critiqued was just another seed of doubt to confront. If her journey was about cultivating something deeply meaningful to her, then the criticism could only serve as fuel for her dedication, not a blade to cut her down. Tomorrow would bring a fresh day filled with possibility, and the time had come to weave her narrative into a collaborative tapestry. The tension leaped within her chest. This was her moment to decide how far she was willing to step into the unknown. What if the first collaboration turned out to be the wrong fit? Would she be able to pivot without losing her way? Those unresolved questions hovered in the air, shrouding the path ahead in uncertainty, a feeling she was beginning to recognize as a precursor to growth. The next morning dawned with a sharpness in the air that hinted at change. Sarah's heart thudded in her chest as she sat at the kitchen table, her notebook open before her like a portal to her ambitions. Each unturned page beckoned her, but the unresolved fears of yesterday lingered, their presence a weight she couldn't ignore. She took a deep breath, feeling the cogs of indecision grind within her. Today was her first official meeting with Clara, a local chef known for her innovative approaches to cuisine. Clara's reputation for blending flavors was legendary, but Sarah had never ventured beyond her own tried-and-true recipes. Would she be open to collaboration, or would the essence of her own creativity become scant among the spices and techniques Clara was known for? As the clock inched closer to their meeting time, Sarah's hands trembled slightly, her mind racing with a myriad of scenarios. What if Clara dismissed her ideas outright? What if her visions of a symbiotic partnership crumbled under the weight of reality? In an effort to ground herself, she stepped outside and let her fingers glide over the leaves of her thriving herbs: basil, thyme, rosemary. Each plant stood confident, unyielding, elements of herself woven into their green structures. Gingerly, she picked a sprig of rosemary and inhaled its heady fragrance, seeking clarity amidst her uncertainty. If those plants thrived in their own right, how could she replicate that in her professional life? With that thought, she resolved to approach the meeting not as a novice seeking approval, but as a partner with unique offerings. Empowered, Sarah made her way to the cafe where they had agreed to meet. The lively chatter and the smell of roasting coffee beans invited her into a world that buzzed with potential. Clara arrived punctually, her presence a whirlwind of energy draped in a colorful apron. Her piercing gaze scanned the titles of the notebooks on the table, a subtle assessment that sent a flurry of nerves through Sarah. Why was she second-guessing herself now? "Hi, Sarah. I've heard a lot about you," Clara began, her voice bright like the sunlight streaming through the cafe windows. "I can't wait to brainstorm ideas together." Those words hung in the air, both a balm and a challenge. Sarah smiled, but felt the sparks of anxiety lurking at the edges of her confidence. How would she communicate her vision without losing the essence of her voice? As they settled into their conversation, Sarah chose to open with her values, the non-negotiable principles she had penned the night before. "Collaboration for me means respecting individuality," she began, meeting Clara's gaze with determination. "This creative process needs to celebrate our differences as much as our synergies." Clara leaned back, her expression thoughtful. "That's a unique perspective," she replied. "But how do you see this working? Bringing two distinct flavors together can often clash if not handled carefully." As they engaged in a back-and-forth dialogue, Sarah felt the rising tension morph into collaboration. Clara pushed gently, raising questions about Sarah's past experiences, moments of creative triumph, as well as setbacks. Each revelation felt like shedding a skin. Vulnerability laid the groundwork for an authentic partnership. But just as the conversation began to flow, doubt crept in. What if Clara challenged her foundational recipes, suggesting drastic changes? The thought felt unsettling, a twist in her gut recalling her earlier fears. Would she stand her ground or capitulate to recommendations that diluted her unique flavor? In that moment, she realized the essence of her growth journey was brewing before her. Sarah decided to lay her cards on the table. "I need us to both stay true to what we love about cooking," she asserted, her voice steady now. "If we don't remain authentic to our roots, we risk diluting the very magic that makes it special." There was a pause as Clara considered the weight of those words. Sarah held her breath, waiting for the verdict. Was this the moment of reckoning where she would find out if her values aligned? Or would she have to retreat back to familiar soil, avoiding the potential for growth? The tension in the air mounted, a delicate balance of possibility hanging between them, as Clara's expression shifted from surprise to contemplation. Would they find common ground without sacrificing individual identity? "Then let us explore this magic together," Clara said slowly, a smile breaking on her face that felt like the sun breaking through heavy clouds. The warmth of that smile ignited a flicker of hope in Sarah's heart. Little did she know, this partnership was only the beginning of an even deeper journey into uncharted territory, one that may test her boundaries further than she had anticipated. What challenges awaited them as they delved deeper into blending their culinary distinctiveness? As the days melted into one another, the collaboration between Sarah and Clara blossomed like a well-tended garden. The initial anxiety of their meetings transformed into a vibrant exchange of ideas, where both women embraced the individual flavors they brought to the table. This newfound partnership allowed Sarah to expand her culinary repertoire while staying rooted in her values, fostering a creative environment that celebrated authenticity. The complexity of crafting menus for their upcoming events sparked inspiration in both women. It was during one particularly lively brainstorming session that Sarah vividly described her dream of a farm-to-table gathering, one that highlighted not just the produce but the journey it took to flourish. Clara's eyes lit up, suggesting they invite local musicians to enhance the atmosphere, turning the event into a feast for all senses. Together, they were creating something meaningful, a connection between food, culture, and community. Weeks flew by, and soon the day of the event arrived. Sarah stood in her kitchen, filled with a blend of nervous anticipation and excitement. The aromatic spices intertwined with the fresh garden herbs, creating an intoxicating promise of the feast ahead. Every dish prepared was not just about flavor. It was a representation of her transformation. No longer simply a single mother burdened by societal judgments, she had evolved into a partner, a creator, someone who dared to dream and execute that dream. As guests trickled into the backyard, Sarah's heart swelled. She could see her children moving about, their faces beaming with pride, helping to set tables adorned with vibrant veggies from their garden. Every smile exchanged tightened the bond between their journey and the community they were cultivating. As people sampled the heirloom tomato bruschetta, laughter mingled with compliments, echoing affirmations of her efforts and dedication. When Clara joined her to present the evening's menu, Sarah felt a surge of empowerment. They stood side by side, two strong women sharing their stories and showcasing their flavors. Recognition flooded over her. She was no longer looking for validation. She had found it within herself and with Clara, who celebrated her uniqueness instead of stifling it. Mixed among their guests were the whispers of her past, the skepticism that once held her captive, but this time, those voices felt like distant echoes. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm golden hue over the gathering, Sarah felt deeply rooted in her presence. She had confronted her fears head-on and emerged stronger than ever, her legs no longer tingling but rooted in a foundation of resilience and purpose. It was then, in the midst of shared joy, that Sarah received a surprise she had longed for. A local food critic, who had heard whispers of the event, approached her with warmth in his eyes. After sampling her dishes, he expressed his intent to feature her story in his column, igniting a deeper validation of her transformation. As he praised not only the taste but the passion woven into each dish, Sarah stood tall, vibrating with recognition for her hard-earned journey. "I always knew you had it in you," Clara whispered, nudging Sarah in encouragement. That night, as she sank into bed, Sarah reflected on the tapestry of experiences that had led her here. The whispers of doubt no longer defined her. She had built something beautiful both in the garden and within herself. The fears that once choked her ambition had receded, replaced by a steadfast knowledge that she could cultivate growth in her life, nurturing her dreams and her children's future with the same care she poured into her garden. Sarah smiled to herself, knowing this was just the beginning of a vibrant new chapter. She was poised to expand, to take her culinary message further this time, not just as a single mother, but as an entrepreneur, someone whose story had the potential to inspire others. As she drifted off to sleep that night, a calm confidence enveloped her, a warmth ignited by the realization that she had created a life filled with purpose, authenticity, and unwavering strength. The journey of transformation continued, each new day offering fresh seeds of opportunity. She felt finally ready to embrace whatever lay ahead, knowing she carried the power to blossom. Now is your moment to take action. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and show your support. Every click counts. Comment your reactions and theories about Sarah's incredible journey and how she overcame. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to spread the inspiration.